So let's talk a little bit about the current trends in repurchase regulations. Repurchases aren't without their critics. And one of the biggest critiques of a share repurchase is that it can be used for nefarious purposes, for opportunistic purposes. One of the main things it can be used for is to manipulate or manage earnings per share, EPS. How does it boost EPS? Well, if you think about it, right, what we're basically talking about is at the bottom line, net income minus preferred dividends divided by common shares outstanding. So there's two ways to manipulate EPS. You can report more net income, increases the numerator. You could also record or report a smaller denominator. That will also influence EPS. So there was, this concern that when we looked at companies who were always meeting or beating EPS forecasts, then we saw a lot of repurchase activity in the consistent beaters, the people that were always meeting or beating what analysts were forecasting as EPS. So the SEC proposed some rules in 2023 just requiring some additional disclosures, the daily level of buyback data, an expanded narrative around why the company did what it did, what the board policies for share repurchases are, any insider trading around those share repurchases. Well, this was great, but it was struck down pretty fast. A federal court vacated this idea and said basically that the SEC did not go through due process when coming up with this new share repurchase legislation or this new share repurchase mandate, um, and that they didn't respond to APA. And APA is the Administrative Procedure Act. I had to look that up, what it actually stood for. But this is an act that binds federal agencies like the SEC. Remember, the SEC is the federal agency. The FASB is the private company or the privately funded accounting standards board. Um, and so there was a vacation or a, I like this term. Where is it? Oh, in text after vacatur, after vacating, right? The new rule. So currently, there are no new disclosure rules in effect, and the companies are still following prior rules, which just require monthly repurchase disclosures, not daily repurchase, and other little forms under a 10Q or a 10Q or a 10K. The SEC did issue some technical amendments to clean up the regulatory text after this was, just to be sure to clarify exactly what needs to be put out there. The problem really was, I think, just the daily level of buyback data was a little bit more cost. The argument was that that level of scrutiny perhaps is more costly than the benefits it provides. Um, but there is still interest in revisiting this idea because, there is more scrutiny. I think things are going to come down the pipeline eventually that are going to look at share repurchase behavior. And quite honestly, like share repurchases take off when there is a corporate tax reduction. So this, I believe, the 2018 Jobs Creations Act was sort of after a lot of the consequences of that tax bill were hindered by the arrival of the pandemic and the shuttering of the economy. But once the dust cleared on that, people were starting to get a little suspect about the share repurchase behavior that was going on, and rightfully so, because there was a ton of it after corporate tax rates were lowered and companies had money to burn. And of course, with the BBB coming through the pipeline, I believe companies will again start putting the accelerator on share repurchases and just going hog wild with them. So that's the general idea of repurchases. Now we're going to look at more of the transactional bookkeeping behind.